Now let's talk with Susan Sparks. Susan, so great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Daniel. It's great to see you and great to see my dear friend, Rabbi Sherre.
So happy to see you.
Right. I always love the analogies you use, and in your new book, we want to talk about that a little bit, Laugh Your Way to Grace. There's many of them, but I wonder if you could start us off by talking just a little bit more about your personal storm that you kind of encountered. We showed some visuals of that in the segment earlier in the show. It wasn't just any trip that you took when you made a decision to move forward in your life, and there were some pretty profound findings out of that. So if you could start there with us and rope us into that a little bit.
Wow, the decision to go to seminary was something that I think was really a point that came out of a place of pain and struggle. You know, I think a lot of folks know that feeling of when you know you're not in the right place, you're not quite where God is calling you to be, but you can't see what that calling is and how it manifests itself. And so, you know, sometimes it just feels like indigestion and you're not really sure what's going on. But I think in my own life, I finally did feel so much of a pull, kind of like undertow in the ocean, that I knew I had to follow it, even though I couldn't quite see how it manifests itself. That's the true leap of faith.
And I'm talking about the journey that you took. The experience you had in Mother Teresa's orphanage. I mean, there was something that clicked in you that said, this is the next direction I need to go in my life. And this was not just a 2-week trip. This was 2 years, 23 countries. I mean, it was pretty profound.
It was. I left the practice of law after 10 years, and it was that moment that I knew I was being called to some type of ministry. I wasn't sure, but frankly, I'm a woman. I came out of a tradition that didn't ordain women, and I was a comedian. We were just stand-up, fit in the church. So.
Right, the direct line is not to the Baptist preacher. Right, I get that.
Yeah, the comedy club to the pulpit, no. So I just took 2 years off to try to figure it out, and I worked for Mother Teresa. I did, you know, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I spent some time in Alaska, but there is this one story that I think did change everything, and it was a little girl that I met in Mother Teresa's orphanage. She was 5 years old. And she had been blind and deaf since birth, but laughed. Now, if you think about that, when she didn't learn to laugh by seeing or hearing other people. And here she is in a place where she doesn't have anything that we think of as blessings in terms of Western standards. No home, no family, no life expectancy, but yet she just laughed and exuded this sense of spirit and joy. And she would love to sit in your lap and put a little ear here in your chest and feel the vibration, and then you'd laugh, she'd laugh. And I thought, that's it. That's God's message of humor and the sacred right there in that little girl.
And how inherent it is, because I think of a baby laughs long before it talks, you know. But I have to say, your message was very moving. But a lot of people don't have the courage that you have. When you get to that place where you stop, you've got that indigestion going on. How do you turn and make, what would you say to our viewers, how do you turn and say, okay, I'm going to go forward in this new direction? Because most people stay stuck.
Yeah. Well, you know, what I usually say to people is it's one step at a time. You know, just one little step at a time. You don't have to, I mean, I did something kind of crazy. I took everything I owned and threw it in storage, packed a backpack, and left to India. Now, most people don't have the means, the time, they have family commitments, they can't do that.
And that's so exotic and so big, you know.
You know, it's sort of my eat, pray, love, right? Not everybody can do eat, pray, love, right? But I think what you can do, though, is make small, tiny, everyday changes in your life. You know, whether it's just to go, say, to a retreat or buy a book on an area of interest that you're thinking about or take a class, so that you just take one step towards where you think God is calling you. It's learning or feeling or trying to find that way to just slowly turn the rudder and see how that is being.
And regain laughter in your life.
Yes, joy I think is a great empowerment for folks too, to be able to laugh and find that joy and compassion in your life.
And Susan, you're doing some really interesting work with seminarians recently. There's an article in the New York Times that we were talking about earlier. Tell us a little bit about bringing this to the pulpit for other people, because for you alone, it's a unique thing that you bring with your life experience, but is there a fear you're encountering with people? Is there generational challenges or issues around that? Or lots of fun stuff, I bet.
That's a great question. I'm really excited to be teaching a class at Union Theological Seminary in New York, and I think I mentioned earlier, it's the first of its kind in the country. And so we're hoping that different seminaries and educational institutions will pick this up. It's not about learning to tell a joke in a sermon. It's a much bigger issue. We spent 8 hours together talking about humor in pastoral care, in hospice, in prison ministry, in battered women's shelter, in self-care as clergy. You know, how do you find that perspective and that energy to keep going? And also, I think humor as a bridge builder. It's very important to know how to use humor to bring together diverse communities, because so much of our pain in this world, I think, is that the fences that are being put up as opposed to the bridges. So I'm really excited that this is being picked up, and that we had not only students, but alum from all over, ministers that came in to study.
But it's interesting how laughter truly is the best medicine, how it's been a medicine for you in all kinds of trials of your own life. It's really helped you weather all the storms, and you're sort of living your words, which is not just talking the talk, but walking the walk.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Sherry. I really do. I think about laughter and what it brings to us in places of pain, because I know we've both gone through some personal losses in our life, and you know, laughter's a lifeboat a lot of times for folks. A thing that reminds us that the pain that we're going through is not who we are; it's just what we're experiencing. And it also helps us transition, I think, through stages of grief. I'm going to tell you a really quick story. The first funeral I did was for a 93-year-old woman in our congregation, one of those folks that would never leave the house unless she was perfectly made up with her hair and her dress. Anyway, I went to the funeral home. The daughter asked me to say a prayer over her, and I put my arm around the daughter, and I put my hand in the casket on Mary's, the deceased, arm, and I went, "Oh!" Which is not a pastoral thing to do at a funeral, you know. And what had happened, I was like, her arm is square. And her daughter started laughing so hard, she reaches in the sleeve and pulls out a box of Miss Clairol hair color.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Because Mama was worried that the color wouldn't be available on the other side. So we laughed, and then the laughter led to tears. And the tears led back to laughter. So it was that wonderful transition of healing that brought.
Susan, I wish we had more time always. You'll have to come back and join us again. The book is Laugh Your Way to Grace. Wonderful read. Thank you
so much.